All right, let's go ahead and get started. Today we will be presenting Simplified iPad Management at Moreland School Districts. All right, so for quick introductions, my name is Alicia Fonseca. I am the Practice Launch Specialist for Systems Manager here at Meraki. We're first going to cover why cloud manage IT. So why do our customers ultimately choose Systems Manager? If you're already familiar with Meraki, the core principle around it is a single pane of glass dashboard approach to all things IT. So we can help you manage everything from not only just endpoint management, but also we can help you manage things like Wi-Fi, switching, security appliances, security cameras. All of that can be done through a single dashboard. I do want to make mention here, if you're familiar with the Meraki solution, that we can help you manage your endpoints as a standalone solution. That means you don't need a Meraki or Cisco infrastructure to use Systems Manager. So I just want to make mention, just because there's a lot of assumptions that you need a Meraki infrastructure, and that's just not the case. You can use Systems Manager as standalone. We'll then jump into Moreland School Districts. We are lucky enough to have a guest with us today. His name is Denis Guerrero. He is the Director of Technology at Moreland School District. Denis is going to share his story around Systems Manager, what life was like without Systems Manager and some of the challenges he faced, and how he was able to overcome those challenges by implementing Systems Manager for his school district. From there, we'll jump into a live demo. And what's unique about this live demo is we are going to be in Moreland School District's dashboard. So if you're familiar with the Meraki webinar series, we typically jump into the Meraki dashboard. But today, you're going to get a live look of an actual customer's dashboard. This is the most fun part because you get to really see the ins and outs of Systems Manager. From there, we'll conclude with the Meraki solution as a whole, and then we'll discuss next steps. One of those major next steps will be the free trial process. So we do offer an absolutely free trial experience for you. You can take out licenses, you can sink your teeth in, find out what Systems Manager is all about, but we can even take it a step further with our point of contact trial support. So when you take out a free trial with us, you'll get all the support you need. An individual is going to help you get that all set up and rolled, and you could really vet out whether or not Systems Manager is the right choice for you. We also have a Q&A box, so I'm lucky enough to have someone here helping me, where you can throw your questions in, and we will get those answered for you. You can even ask Denis specific questions. So we're lucky enough to have Denis today. Certainly ask him any question you would like. We'll accumulate those throughout the webinar. And I have someone here who will help me share some of those questions and get those answered for you. Don't wait till the end of the webinar. Please ask throughout. That way we can get those answered throughout and have enough questions to answer at the conclusion of this. So about Cisco Meraki. So Meraki is all about simplifying IT with cloud management. So it's a complete cloud managed IT solution. We can help you manage everything from wireless to your switching, your security, your SD-WAN, your security cameras, and of course, what you're all here for, your endpoints. So again, the core principle around Meraki is the single pane of glass where you can manage all things related to IT, or at least all the solutions I named here, through one easy-to-use dashboard. Again, emphasis around, you do not need all these Meraki solutions to use our endpoint management. However, there are some features and settings to unlock with things like Wi-Fi, things like security. But all that's going to be covered in the demo today are features you could take advantage today with our free trial. So we're the leader in cloud managed IT. So we're among Cisco's fastest growing portfolios, and arguably we are Cisco's most successful acquisition. So just to kind of speak to that and give you some numbers here, we have 250,000 unique customers. We have 3.5 million Meraki devices online. We have 5.5 million active Meraki dashboard users, and 10 million devices managed by Systems Manager. So that number actually doesn't do us full justice because we are rapidly approaching 11 million. So really shows our footprint in the end device management space, We are managing upwards of 11 million devices with our Systems Manager solution. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this slide. This slide is really just designed to help alleviate any concerns around the cloud. We know that sometimes people are still a little nervous about the cloud, so we do have a site that you can visit. It's meraki.cisco.com/trust, and you can learn how this cloud solution is secure and reliable. So you can learn things such as HIPAA compliancy and how we're HIPAA compliant, how we help you become PCI compliant, and as far as reliability goes, we have a 99.99% uptime SLA. So again, if you want to learn more information about reliability and security with the cloud, visit the site. So Meraki for primary education IT teams. So Meraki provides so many different solutions across the board for education. The first one I want to make mention of is high-density wireless. So we have high-performing wireless without the high maintenance. It's designed to deliver in classrooms of all sizes. So regardless if you have a small classroom that you need to provide wireless for or high-density wireless, we can do that. But we can also serve, say, an entire auditorium with high-density wireless. Safety and security. So we keep students and teachers safe with options ranging from perimeter network security, so firewall, and physical campus security, so security cameras. And I know I'm really hounding this, but you can view within a dashboard your firewall security as well as your physical security from the same dashboard. Our dashboard has built-in tools, so very easy to use, out-of-the-box analytics and tools to deliver best-in-class IT. And of course, what we're all here for, endpoint management, the ability to manage thousands of iOS, Android, Mac, and PC devices from a single dashboard, making one-on-one programs a reality. So we are trusted in thousands of primary education schools. So here are some of the faces that we work with. I would like to draw our attention to the Meraki website. I encourage you to visit it following the webinar. We have case studies with schools that are using us, so you can find out more stories aside from Denis's story today. You could actually even see Denis's story. I believe it is posted online for you to see if you want to revisit it. But nonetheless, you can take a look at all the customers using us and learn more about their stories and see if it's applicable for you. So Meraki Systems Manager. We have endpoint management for schools. So really to simplify this, we have three major buckets. We have provision, monitor, and secure. So provision is simply device setup, right? The out-of-the-box experience. When you have that iPad, we can grant Wi-Fi access, we can grant VPN access, email access. Those are types of accesses you can push to the device in advance. You can push applications. So for example, a first grade student iPad can get first grade math application, and you can push that in advance so it's ready to rock and roll for the student. You can also push software as well. Naturally, you can apply restrictions in advance, so getting that iPad prepared and ready to go for a student, and all the applicable restrictions for the students. The next category is monitor, so global visibility. We give you global visibility into all your endpoints. So with one dashboard, you can take a look at all the endpoints that you're managing. We actually have a flexible table where you can see the analytics and statistics for your devices. You can audit applications, so find out and make sure that devices have the right applications. You can make sure that your devices are following certain security profiles that you set up. You can also track stolen and lost devices. So for example, if an iPad were to make it into a student's backpack and they were to leave the perimeter of the school, we can actually check the GPS location of that iPad using what we call geofencing, which we'll cover in the live demo. And when that iPad leaves the perimeter, you can be notified. We have alerts set up where you can be notified, you can take action. You could even put that iPad in lost mode. So sending it a message saying, return this iPad to this address and provide your phone number to connect with whomever has that iPad. And of course, IT's favorite, troubleshoot remotely, the ability to troubleshoot all these devices without having the devices physically in hand. And last but not least is the secure bucket. You can recover wipe missing devices. So the example I gave where an iPad makes it off campus because a student brought it home, it shouldn't be there. Perhaps you suspect that iPad's not going to make it back and it has sensitive information on it. you can go ahead and wipe that device. Cisco Meraki integration. So we actually have integrations with Cisco security solutions such as Umbrella, so keeping students from going to certain sites, or AMP for endpoints clarity, tracking malicious traffic. The important thing to note here is because we have these integrations, you can really beef up your security with our integrations with Cisco. So because we're a Cisco company, we actually collaborate with these solutions, and we can enforce and use these solutions to better secure and create a better mobile strategy for you. And then last but not least, we can enforce conditional network and data access. So depending for the iPad example, the Geofence, if the iPad leaves campus, you can retrieve data access, things like that. So again, 3 buckets: provision, monitor, and secure. So why Systems Manager? Well, it's easy to use, so you can manage all endpoints through an intuitive web-based dashboard from anywhere. It's cloud managed, so there's no hosting requirements, no mandatory installation cost, and no downtime for updates, so we push updates for you. And my favorite part is support and licensing. So there are no setup fees with Systems Manager. There's no maintenance fees with Systems Manager. When you buy 100 licenses to support 100 devices, that's all you need. And you're always going to have the latest and greatest feature set. So we don't have any tiered feature sets where if you pay X amount of dollars, you get access to additional features. Everyone gets the latest and greatest. No one has to pay setup fees. No one has to pay maintenance fees. We also allow licenses to be transferred. So for example, if you're managing an iPad and you no longer plan to use that iPad any longer, and you don't want that license to be on that iPad, you can actually retrieve that license from the iPad, and you can apply it to an iPad you would like to manage now, and that iPad will consume that license. So you could really save a lot of money by recycling your licenses, and we give you that flexibility. We also allow you to work across multiple platforms, so iOS, Mac, Chrome operating system for enterprise, Android, Windows, and we also integrate with things like VPP, so Apple's Volume Purchasing Program, and Apple's DEP, Device Enrollment Program. We're actually going to talk a lot about DEP today in the live demonstration. But I do want to make mention, because we have the ability to work with so many operating systems, if you ever wanted to implement something like a BYOD policy, we're not limited to iOS. We can allow you to implement a BYOD policy because we can work with all these different operating systems, so the student or staff doesn't have to have an iOS device to enforce that. So the moment we've all been waiting for, allow me to introduce Denis Guerrero. He is the Director of Technology for Moreland School District. Again, Denis is going to share his story around endpoint management, some of the challenges he faced, and how he used Systems Manager to overcome those challenges.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
I can.
All right. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today to kind of hear out Moreland's story on how we were able to manage the fleet of iPads we had district-wide, leveraging Cisco Meraki's Systems Manager product, and kind of hear out everything we went through to get to the point where today where we're managing 1,300 iPads through the system centrally located here from the district. So a little bit about Moreland. We're in San Jose, California, the Bay Area, West San Jose officially. We have 7 schools, 1 middle school, 2 K-8s, and then 4 traditional elementary schools, about 4,800 students and 350 staff. The tech department, it comprises of myself, the director, and 5 employees. So we have 3 technicians for our school sites, 1 system admin, network admin staff member, and then a data analyst staff member that deals with our student information related to state reporting and county reporting. So it's a lean team, but we do a great job of supporting the amount of students and staff we have for our district. We have different groups that kind of were addressed with this project that we did for managing our iPads, the general classroom, our special education students, and then our English learners. And as of right now, the most current stats we have about 1,300 iPads and about 2,400 Chromebooks, and we have Meraki access points deployed per classroom. So a little background on kind of where we started with this project was we really wanted to look at first initially starting with the why to kind of feed off Simon Sinek, famous author and presenter out there with his framework on looking at starting with the why before you look at what and how you're going to do a project and complete a project. So for us, we kind of broke it down into two sections, the instructional pedagogy approach of starting with the why, and then kind of for the tech department, the technology essentials that we wanted to ensure we covered. So for the instructional side, we definitely wanted a curriculum with the device that we picked as the grade level TK through second, curriculum that's engaging and provides our students kind of that ever-encompassing common core feature sets that, is kind of required now as a school district. We had the different populations that we know we needed to serve and the different needs that those populations have. So our general ed students, our special ed, and our English learners. And then give back more instructional time to our teachers to not be dealing with password resets, app distribution, and give more time to them to actually do what they do best and provide instruction to our students. For the tech side of the house, because we're a small department, some of these things were key to us. So as much as possible, zero-touch provisioning in terms of being able to push out apps to iPads. We wanted to have at least minimal steps required to get that done. The iPad solution device was picked for the rich app ecosystem iOS has. And two big ones for us, the interoperability between Meraki access points and the systems manager, and kind of the level of detail we can get by seeing those two systems all within one system that manages both our Meraki's access points and our systems manager. So that has been extremely helpful when we're troubleshooting issues at the school sites to see, is it a network issue? Is it an issue with the iPad? Is it an issue with the apps not being pushed from the Apple servers? And the ability to see that from one screen and drill down from an access point all the way down to the device itself has been a huge time saver for our department in troubleshooting issues that might happen at the school sites. So I'll start with kind of where we were at before we started this project and the challenges that we face with the previous setup. So we had around 85 Apple IDs district-wide. Some were tied to personal email addresses. Others were to generic district-issued email addresses. All across the board, there was no standardization. It really difficult when we had issues with iPads getting locked out if an employee had left. What was the password? It was an external email address. We can't access that now. So a lot of challenges with the previous setup. It was not centralized, so we had MacBook Pros at the school sites, and the MacBook Pros would have Apple Configurator, and there was a teacher dedicated to pushing out apps at the school sites. Some of these apps were purchased via gift cards, personal credit cards, vouchers, so really hard to even get a summary when I would be asked by executive cabinet on what apps we had, what was the spending on apps for our iPad fleet. So really challenging to get any sort of numbers and reporting with how initially everything was set up. iPads were purchased from different sources, so not from Apple. There was third-party vendors that iPads were purchased from. Some of those iPads were never disenrolled from the previous entity that they were purchased from, so that presented issues, let alone trying to get a summary of what models and the serial numbers for all the iPads we had. So long story short, it was a challenging environment to try to manage iPads, and we knew we had to do something different to get a hold of managing 1,300 iPads for the entire district. So we looked at different solutions out there for device management, and we went to a couple of sessions that Meraki folks had at their headquarters related to Systems Manager, and really started seeing how we could benefit with that solution. So a bulk of the work was, and time-consuming work was, aligning all our Apple-related challenges in terms of how the setup was done here. So we went from 84, 85 Apple IDs and consolidated that to one Apple ID that's used with Systems Manager, and that's the Apple ID that's associated with pushing out apps to all our iPads for the different profiles. In discussions with our Ed Services Department and the different departments here at the district, we came up with the ideas of the different profiles we would need, especially to address the needs of our different student demographics we have. So we have general classroom profiles for every school site. We have special education profiles. We have about 8 of those. And then we have different profiles related to our English learners. So that was key in the ability, not only within Systems Manager, that you could easily create a profile, copy it, and then on the copied version, you can tweak it to adjust it to whatever the new profile needed to be. That was a huge time saver with Systems Manager. Managing the iPads and the access points all from one dashboard, again, hints back to the point I made about being able to support and troubleshoot issues happening at the sites much more quickly with having just one system to look at, and you can drill down to the level of details you need to drill down to see what the issue is. New processes we put in place now that we had Systems Manager after we got through all the initial Apple restructuring was we have a Google form now that teachers submit their app requests to. Our Ed Services Department reviews those. Once it's approved, that information is sent to the tech department, and then the app is pushed out to the corresponding profile at the school site. So we can strategically now align our budgets to see the specific apps that we need for the specific grade levels or the specific groups, where beforehand it was usually just push out to the entire fleet of iPads that are managed by that centralized Mac laptop at the school site. So we've seen a lot of improvements in terms of how fiscally we can spend money on apps for our students, much more strategic approach with how we have it set up now with Systems Manager.
Awesome.
So that kind of completes kind of our story of how we moved from a decentralized hodgepodge of different management setups to more centralized now here at the district office, that we can control what is on our iPads, what security features we have and settings we have on an iPad, and to deploy a new iPad is completely different now than what it was before, and the time it takes is much less than what we were dealing with when we didn't have Systems Manager.
Very cool. Well, Denis, thank you so much for sharing your story, and thank you for letting us pop into your dashboard. Because we are going to give the audience here a nice live look of your actual dashboard. So I'll probably be collaborating with you as we navigate through this. First, I want to start off with, this is that single pane of glass dashboard that we were discussing at the introduction and that Denis talked a little bit about. One thing I want to draw your attention to is if you look at the left-hand side, you can see we are currently in Moreland School District Systems Manager settings page. But if you go up here, you'll see that Denis does in fact have wireless, right? So all of that can be accessed through this one dashboard. So what you're looking at right now is the clients list. And these are all of Denis's or Moreland School District's devices being managed. So you can see all the iPads listed here. This is the flexible table I was referencing earlier, where you can see the status, the name of the device, the model of the device, the operating system, connectivity, serial numbers. This is how Denis has configured this table to look. But if you click on the plus sign over here, you can see that you can get more visibility from a bird's eye view. So for example, if it was important to me to see whether or not the devices here were DEP enrolled, By selecting that, I could take a look and see that these devices are, in fact, DEP enrolled. But I'm going to go ahead and turn that off because that's not what Dennis wants to see. So the first thing I want to draw your attention to is tags. So if you look here, Matt Day's iPad has the Latimer Classroom tag. So safe to assume, Dennis, that Matt Day's iPad is for Latimer School.
Yes.
Good. So the way that was applied is Dennis went here, he went ahead and created a tag, and now that that tag exists, you can see Latimer Classroom. So he's tagged that with Latimer Classroom. You can even remove tags here if you'd like. But the purpose of tags is to designate restrictions, for example, or applications. So for example, if Latimer Classroom tag, all those devices that have the Latimer Classroom tag need, say, the first grade math application, you can say all tags with the Latimer Classroom will be pushed the first grade mathematics application. So we'll talk about that in a little bit, but it's important to know that that's how we really scope things and determine which devices, in this case, which iPads will get what restrictions, what settings, what applications. So I'm going to jump into, you can see there's a variety of things to choose from, but the first thing I want to talk about is DEP. So DEP is Apple's Device Enrollment Program. So what Apple's Device Enrollment Program does is you can actually do what Dennis did. You can take all the devices that you own, and now you can take them from anywhere. So regardless of whether or not you bought them from Apple or an Apple reseller, or if you got them from Best Buy or Amazon with the new iOS update, you can enroll all of your organization's devices into DEP. And what that essentially does is it gives you permanent and complete ownership over those devices. So as far as Apple's concerned, as far as we're concerned, those are Moreland School District's devices. So what Dennis was doing previous was, Dennis, where you had different usernames and passwords where it was a little confusing in terms of ownership, and you were assigning those and trying to retrieve those usernames back, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, you could go ahead and elaborate.
So kind of what we first faced was different iPads were assigned to either a personal email address. So if we need to retrieve something regarding that iPad, we needed to get access to that personal email address, which is very difficult if that employee is no longer here at the district, or the employee might not be reachable at the point in time we're trying to address an issue to get to that info. So to clean that all up, you can see there it's assigned by our basically VPP account. So if you see the assigned column, that is the central account now. That is the VPP account for all our iPads. So if we need to push out apps, it's via that account and no longer personal email addresses or generic district assigned email addresses. Makes it way more manageable than dealing with what we had before. Exactly.
So with DEP, you can enroll all of your devices, taking complete and permanent ownership over those. And what's really cool about DEP is we have an integration with it. So as you can see here, we are pulling the DEP information from Dennis's DEP account, and it's all populating here. So all the devices that Dennis has at his DEP are showing here within our Systems Manager. And what's neat about this is it's going to unlock additional settings for you. So DEP can really simplify the enrollment process, the setup process of your devices. So that out-of-box experience we talked about, what you can go ahead and do is you can say, I want to, well, kind of getting back to it, you can really simplify the enrollment process by automating that the mobile device management is enrolled on the device, and you can automate supervision to the device during setup. So that means when the device is pulled out of the box, you can make sure that it automatically enrolls in our Systems Manager, and you can make sure that the device is supervised from the get-go. So you do that here by dictating how you want that setup process to work. So you can say, when this device is set up, I want to allow or disallow pairing. You can say, I want this device to be supervised or not supervised. By clicking supervised, you're actually unlocking even additional settings, features, restrictions that we'll talk about here later in the demonstration. And you can even see here, by selecting supervised, you are making it so you have the option to make the mobile device management, in this case Systems Manager, removable or not. So you can say, I do not want my Systems Manager to be removed in any way, shape, or form, say by a student. So I'm going to take away that capability. So Systems Manager must stay on there. It can't be taken off, and I can go ahead and make it mandatory. So I can make it mandatory that the devices selected here must have Systems Manager. They cannot remove it. If you scroll down, you'll notice shared iPad, and so you can activate, deactivate that here. So if you have things like Apple School Manager, this is where that would be relevant. And then as that device is being enrolled, let's say, Dennis, you're enrolling these devices and you don't want to go through all these various steps of terms and conditions and Apple ID and Apple Pay. You can actually really streamline this and speed right through it. And what will happen when you take the iPad out of the box or factory reset, all of these settings will be applied automatically, and it'll skip through the steps that you don't need to continuously go over every single time you enroll a device. So really powerful stuff with DEP, taking control over your devices, and being able to really simplify the initial setup process of a device. So we're going to talk about, we're actually going to jump into applications. So the pushing of applications, getting applications for your organization. As something Dennis said that I felt was really powerful, that teachers no longer have the responsibility of pushing out applications. You know, imagine for a moment you're a teacher, you aspire to teach students, and now you have the responsibility of pushing applications to your students, and now you're almost learning an entire new trade. So you could really simplify this process for your schools or school, and you can push these applications and make it easy for everybody. So if you look here at Dennis's page, you can see this is the application management page. You can see all the applications that Dennis already has for Moreland School Districts. I'm going to select first grade math because I keep referencing it. And Dennis has first grade math here. He has the application downloaded. There's some additional settings, so if he wants to keep that up to date, he can. He has some options to select here. And he could either not use VPP, which is Apple's volume purchasing program, or he can do the old way of doing things, which is using iTunes stores and usernames and passwords and whatnot to deploy applications. But Dennis actually leverages a program called VPP. And essentially what that does is you can purchase a pool of licensing. So in this case, he purchased 49 of the first grade math and learning games. And he distributed all 49 of those. So 0 of 49 are left, and he was able to allocate those to 49 different devices. So really easier way to deploy and assign more than one application if you're doing things by volume. So here's the reference to tags again. So you could decide where you want this application to go. So in this instance, Dennis has created a tag called RSP. But let's say, for example, everyone at Latimer School or everyone with the Latimer School classroom tag has a first grade class that's going to need this mathematics application. You can say any device with that tag is going to get this application. So any iPad that's being used by a first grader is going to get that first grade math application. Okay, I don't want to mess up Dennis's settings here. And then we also have policy tags. So we're going to jump into this in a little bit, but it's actually in regards to geofencing. So I talked a little bit earlier about how we know the GPS location of a device. So you can say, you know what, our students can only use this application if they're within our perimeter. So based off the location of that iPad, they can use it. If they're outside the perimeter, they won't have this tag because it's dynamic. It changes based off whether or not they're on the school campus, for example. And so you don't want them, say, for example, using the application at home and doing schoolwork that should be done in class. And then last but not least, we have user tags. So you can assign, say, applications to specific users. And we actually can help you leverage things like Active Directory and push things to, say, students or teachers or however it is you've set up your Active Directory. And then down here, you can see all of the iPads that have this first grade math learning application. I actually just showed you an application that Denis already had downloaded, but if you wanted to add some more, you can actually just select here and select Add New. You'll notice the other operating systems, but today we are talking about iOS. I can go ahead and say I want to add this school-related application. So I can go ahead and search it there. You can use the iTunes through there. You can do the VPP. So you can actually use the VPP portal to purchase those and then allocate from here. But if you wanted to give the Hopscotch application to all devices, you could. But if you wanted to scope it to Latimer's Classroom and say everyone with Latimer Classroom tag needs this device, or excuse me, needs this application, you can say they can only use the application on the school campus. You get the idea. So it's just as easy to pop into an already existing application that you own as it is to add additional applications. So moving on from applications, I'm actually going to jump into settings.
One quick thing, Alicia, on that
application
that's a huge tool for us that we use is to mass update applications. So you can check specific applications and then from this screen say update this specific application so that it gets the latest version of that app available.
Okay.
So we have a process where on a weekly basis, usually on Friday evenings, we'll do a check all and it'll mass update our apps so that come Monday, those apps have been updated to the latest version for the ones that are behind.
Awesome. And it only takes a few clicks to do that, and you no longer have to designate your teaching staff to updating applications.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure they love. So let's jump into profiles. So profiles is essentially settings. So creating settings and then pushing those settings to your iPads. So Denis, if you want, you could actually speak a little bit about kind of the logic between or behind some of the profiles you've created here with each settings.
Yeah, so you'll see the ones that have _classroom, those are our general ed classroom profiles for each school site. So if Anderson Elementary wants one specific profile for their general classroom, we can do that. And if Baker doesn't need that app, then it doesn't get pushed out to the Baker. So that's how granular you can get with how you set up your different profiles of the security settings within each profile can be different at the school site. So lower grade, higher grade might have different things that they're able to do on the iPad because you allow it on the settings profile.
Well, let's jump into one of your existing profiles here. So I'm actually going to jump into Anderson Classroom. So I'm going to jump into an existing profile, and I'll also show you how you can set up a profile from scratch. So if I jump into Anderson Classroom, you've named it Anderson Classroom, and you've scoped it to, lo and behold, devices with the tag Anderson Classroom. So this is where Denis is actually leveraging the tags he's assigned earlier. All of those iPads need the Anderson Classroom settings and restrictions. So he's gone ahead and done that here. He could add additional policy tags if you'd like to, but really easy to set up the profile. And then he can start customizing from here. So he can say, all right, I'm going to create restrictions for Anderson's Classroom. I don't mind if they use the camera here, but I don't want them to install apps. So I can deselect that and have that not selected. And as you go down, you'll see more iOS and macOS restrictions. The ones that Denis has checked, he feels that the user can do, and the ones that are unchecked, those are restrictions that won't be enforced. Excuse me, that will be enforced. So as you go down here, you'll see applications, you'll see different, here's iCloud for iOS, macOS, iCloud specifically for iOS, iCloud specifically for macOS. But let's scroll all the way down to the bottom here. And here is iOS restrictions supervised. So remember earlier during the DEP portion of the webinar, I mentioned that you can unlock additional settings and additional restrictions. These are settings and restrictions that you can now enforce because the device is supervised. So see, there's various things that Denis can do because these devices are supervised that he wouldn't have the ability to do without. So just wanted to have you guys check that out, some of the additional things that you can do. So we can go on and spend a lot of time on the restrictions page, but for sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and move on here. So Denis has pre-configured Wi-Fi settings so that iPad can jump onto, in this case, Meraki Wi-Fi with ease. And one of the things that supervision allows you to do is home screen layout. So for Anderson Classroom tag devices, Denis has set up what their home screen layout is going to look like. So here's some folders here. You can see different applications that are really easy to access straight from the get-go. But he has this type of control over what applications and folders are being seen right away when they turn on or when they open up the iPad. So I'm actually going to start from scratch and create a new profile just so you can see how it's done. So I just click Add Profile here at the top right-hand corner. For the sake of time, we won't go through any type of advanced setup. We'll do standard. It supports all device types. I'll select Continue. And I'm going to give me, actually, I'll just pretend like this is Anderson being set up for the first time. So here's Anderson Classroom. I'm going to name it Demo Description. And I want to scope it to all devices with Anderson Classroom. And then here's all the devices, 222 devices that this is going to be relevant for. When I select Add Settings, here's where Denis set up the restrictions. What's really cool about this new setup page is we can actually filter based off the operating system that you're using. So in this case, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to look at all the options for Windows, right? We're not deploying Windows. We are doing iOS devices today, and now it's going to filter all the iOS restrictions and settings here. So if I select restrictions, here's that same restrictions page where you can click and unclick. When I go to Add Settings here, I'll go back. I'm going to do some more additional things here. I'm going to set up Wi-Fi just like Denis did. Could do that here. Select iOS again. What else do I want to add here? Remember earlier when I made mention that we have integrations with Cisco? Here's where you can really leverage that. You could really beef up your security by leveraging things like Cisco Umbrella and Cisco Clarity. So I'll just go ahead and click those. Let's pretend I'm configuring these as we go. And as I scroll down, here are some additional things I would like to do. Maybe iOS wallpaper. Maybe you want to brand all of your iPads with Moreland School District, right? The lock screen, the home screen can have the Moreland School District logo or a specific school's logo. You can do that here. So all Anderson Classroom tag devices will get that. And then here's home screen layout. Here is where Denis created the home screen. I'm going to go ahead and put the calculator in there. I'm going to go ahead and put the first grade math in there. You can add a folder. You can start pulling any math-related stuff in there. So all of that can be set up here. You get the idea. And the most important part is you've created this profile to be applied to devices with a specific tag. All right, so moving on, I'm finally going to talk about geofencing. All right, so Denis has created a bunch of different geofences here. Denis, do you have any good geofence stories for us where maybe an iPad has made it off campus or ended up somewhere where it shouldn't have been?
Yeah, so we had a situation where iPads were taken from one of the school sites and brought to the district office, and geofencing did what it was supposed to do. It alerted us to the email address we have configured, and we immediately were notified as the IT department that, okay, iPad from the school site has left the area that you have configured for geofencing, so then we could move forward and figure out, okay, where did that iPad go? It turned out that an employee had brought him back here to the district office for something that they were going to talk about in a meeting, I guess. But that level of notification and integration is kind of one of the key features with Systems Manager, that you can do things like this and not have to try to trace down where that device is at.
Mm-hmm. Well, these iPads are assets, right? So we want to make sure we know where they are, or make sure that you know where they are. And I'm actually going to select one of your geofences that you already have set up. So you can see on the map here, you have Anderson Elementary School, and this geofence is going to be applied to Anderson Classroom tag that's been created. And if you scroll down, you can see that Denis has created a description for this geofence, and it is incredibly accurate because we use things like latitude and longitude. So he has the accuracy down here for Anderson School. So if any of the devices with the tag Anderson Classroom leaves this perimeter that Denis has set up, he will be alerted. And the reason he will be alerted is because we have alerts that you can set up. So on our alerts page, you can see a client violates a geofence policy. So I imagine, Denis, you're the administrator here, so you're going to get that notification. And then you could actually add different emails in which you would like to get that notification. So anyone who's relevant and needs to know that an asset, an iPad, has left the perimeter. Really easy to set up. You can just apply it. You really just drop it, and then you could go ahead and select where you want to put the geofence. I don't want to tinker with this too much because I don't want to mess up what Denis already has, but if you take a look at the existing geofence, this can actually be grabbed. This can be pulled to shrink and grow, and then that can operate as your geofence. So talking about dynamic tags, what's interesting about this is if it violates the geofence or is compliant with the geofence, we actually give you a visual of whether or not a device is compliant or not compliant. So not only will Denis be alerted, but let's jump into an iPad here and tie this back to the client's page where you can see all of the devices that Denis has. You can jump in there and get complete visibility over every device. So I can see where that device is. I can see some additional details here, including its tags. When I scroll down, here's a geofencing tag, and this is a dynamic tag. And the reason it's dynamic is that tag will change based off whether or not the device is compliant. So if the device is outside the perimeter, this will be red. It won't be compliant. If it's within the perimeter, like it is now, it'll be compliant. So that's really important when you're giving access to, say, a network or access to data. You can actually pull, say, an application and say, you can't use this application if you're not within this perimeter. So when the geofence says not compliant, you can say that application will not be pushed to that device. So pretty cool stuff. As you go down here, you can see things like whether or not an app is missing. If you continue to scroll down, you'll see all the different applications that are on this specific device. And if I select missing, you'll see that Google Translate is the missing device, and you can reinstall. Now on this very same page, if I scroll up, you can see all the restrictions that Denis has set for the Latimer Classroom profile. So Matt is subject to the Latimer Classroom profile. So this is Matt's iPad. And you can see all the restrictions that are set here. So you can get a bird's eye view by just jumping into each device. And then last but not least are our MDM commands. So I told a story at the beginning of the webinar about what you do when an iPad makes it into a student's backpack and that student walks off campus, or in Denis's case, someone takes it to the district office, which is outside the GPS or outside the geofence perimeter. So there's a couple of things that Denis could do. The first thing he could do is he could lock the device. So if that iPad makes it outside the perimeter, he can see the device is outside the perimeter with an alert, and he could say, you know what, I'm going to lock that until I get it back. I'm going to lock it. You can send the device a message that says, this is Latimer School's iPad. It must be returned to this address. Please contact this phone number. That's something you can set up to make sure you get your assets back. You know, maybe the student, you know, didn't mean any harm. He or she just took it and needs to bring it back to you. Selective wipe. So maybe that iPad makes it off campus and you have a suspicion that that iPad is never going to make it back, but it has sensitive information on there. It's got applications you don't want people playing around with. It has different access to your network, to your data. You can go ahead and wipe that device to further protect yourself from those iPads getting into the wrong hands. And then you could do things like erase the device, lock the device. These are the types of commands and controls you have here, and you can implement those accordingly. So I talked a little bit about geofence policies and whether or not you are abiding by a geofence. We actually have security policies available. Doesn't look like Dennis has that set up here, but if you wanted to enforce any type of security policy where you say this iPad must be running, say, anti-spyware, something like that, you can say if this device is not complying with the things we want this device to do as it pertains to security, you can have a dynamic tag there that says this is not secure in that it's not following your policy, or it is secure, and it'll check the posture of the device, and you can make decisions based off that. So if someone is compliant with your security policy, you can push them an application. If someone is not following your security policy, you can take that application back. The same goes with profiles. You can give people settings, and you could take them away, and you could even apply more restrictions to those that aren't following policies such as geofence and security. So that just about wraps up the demo portion. So I'm going to go here and wrap up everything and go back to our presentation. Again, so much stuff to cover. As far as the demo goes, we could spend all day in there. So Meraki Solutions, I made mention at the beginning of the webinar that we have so many different solutions aside from endpoints. We have wireless access points, we have security appliances, we have switching, we have security cameras, and what's really cool is you can unlock additional feature sets that I did not talk about today. Wireless Sentry, VPN Sentry, those are things that can work in tandem with your security appliance and Meraki Wireless. So something to definitely take a look at following the conclusion of the webinar. But again, Systems Manager is a standalone solution. You do not need a Meraki environment and or Cisco environment for it to work. So next steps, as promised, we have our blog. And I must confess, I'm actually registered to this blog because the world is changing so quickly, it can be tough to keep up. So you can actually register for this blog, get all the different Meraki updates as it pertains to all the different solutions. But if you want to learn more about endpoint management and all the different updates that we have, I strongly suggest to register to the blog. So many different changes happening all the time. And the next thing we want to point you to is the community. So the community is really popular. It's about, I believe, 6 to 7 months old. We have a lot of your peers, so Meraki customers that are hanging out in there. They're chatting with one another. They're sharing ideas. They're sharing stories. They're giving feedback, answering questions. You could even post things in there and start collaborating with other Meraki peers. So a really great place to learn more. And it's kind of nice to learn from someone like yourself, right? You could subscribe to K through 12 and learn about what other schools are doing as opposed to me talking on other schools' behalf. And last but not least is the risk-free Systems Manager trial. So we're going to have a rep reach out to you. We want to make sure that you guys really take advantage of this opportunity to try Systems Manager. You won't know until you try. So definitely enroll, get the free licenses. Again, it's absolutely free. You're going to get the support that you need with trial representatives. So someone's going to proactively reach out to you, which is very rare, right? Someone's going to reach out to you and say, I'm going to help you with this. I'm going to help you get started. Let's enroll, and let's deploy this for you and find out whether or not this is the right fit. So a really cool opportunity to vet out the solution. I encourage all of you to take advantage of this free opportunity. There truly are no caveats. So thank you for joining. We're going to go through Q&A. So we're going to go through that right now. Just give us a moment to take a look at some of the questions we have. Dennis, it looks like I have a question for you.
All right.
So the question here is, what is the procedure when you add new devices to get them into the Systems Manager dashboard? How much interaction is needed?
So with our setup, and I mean, every district is going to be different in terms of what things you want to bypass through the general iPad setup of kind of what you were showing at that point in time in the presentation of what things to skip or not skip. So for us, usually it's about 3 screens. Once you get past the Wi-Fi password, then it kicks into all the bypass screens we have. And then after that, the device is basically enrolled with the profile that it's going to have associated based on how it's assigned in Systems Manager. But if you have, so for example, if you don't skip some of those initial screens, then yeah, your time can be longer in terms of individual iPad. But for a lot of those, we select to skip so that our texts aren't prompted.
I have a fun question here for you. It says, what model of Meraki APs are deployed in your classrooms?
So we have a mixture of MR16s, MR34s, and MR53s, the newest ones.
Oh, nice. High density there.
Yeah. So those ones have gone into a new building that went up over the summer. So definitely leveraging the capabilities that that AP brings to the table with the Wave 2 functionality.
I have a question for me. It says, can you prevent a user from changing the wallpaper on an iPad? Yes. So when I showed the settings where you can determine what you want the wallpaper to be on the iPads, you could brand that, say, with like the Moreland School District logo, and you can make it so the wallpaper is always that. So your students aren't just deciding what those wallpapers are going to look like. Okay. So it looks like my assistant here is going to answer those questions one off that we still have up there. But we do want to make sure, and we're mindful of your time and get you back to your work. So Dennis, thank you so much for joining us. Love that we had you here. And to all of you out there that joined us today, we actually have a survey coming your way. Incredibly important that you fill that out. We want to perfect this webinar, and the only way we can get better is from your feedback. So we know you're carving out an hour of your time to check these webinars out. So if we want to make best use of everyone's time, we got to get that feedback. So please fill out the survey, and don't forget to reach out in regards to trials. We have representatives reaching out to you, but also be proactive. You got to get Systems Manager in your hands to really find out whether or not it's a solution for you. It's an absolutely free trial, and you get hands-on support. Super rare. So go ahead, get those trials going, and please provide us your feedback. Thank you all for attending.